Carl here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it is of course a different kind of horror where I take a look at Hallmark style rom-coms, B-movies and the like around that. Stuff that doesn't quite fit the normal site, but I get some enjoyment out of it. We're talking about a movie that I think speaks volumes. 3 days after watching it and going to write my notes for it, I could barely remember a thing about it. Which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad film. I don't think it's a good film, don't get me wrong. It is, after all, a Hallmark TV rom-com. But I've seen way worse. The problem is just how paint by numbers it is and how it translates into a predictable and bland overall watch. It is, of course, Letter Never Sent.
You're such a great friend.
She's the one that got away.
Just seeing her again has brought back all these old feelings.
He's the one fighting for a second chance at true love.
It's almost like I've always been in love with you, even before we met.
Directed by W. Hogan with a story written by Alex Colantonio, Ray and Justin McLaughlin, Khaled Harris plays Henry, a man who once wrote his best friend Claire, played by Hayley Webb, a love letter in college. It was a letter never sent, get it? Many years later, returning home for his mother's birthday, he reconnects with Claire and realises that he's still madly in love with her. There's just one problem. What is it? You know it. What's the problem? She's leaving the small town to move to the big city with her boyfriend, Rich, played by Jonathan Chase. Can you guess who's the bad guy in this? Will Henry and Claire end up together, or is he destined to simp after her for the rest of his life? Look, I'm going to be straight with you. As I often am in these videos, I took an immediate dislike to Henry, and I don't think I was supposed to. I think I was supposed to feel sorry for him and hope that he gets to go. But I did not like this dude at all, because he's obsessed with Claire. And not understanding that, and me kind of just getting dropped into it and being like, why the fuck's he harping on about this girl he hasn't seen in a decade, that he once wrote a letter in college, and now he's acting weird about it. There's the problem. Part of the reason why I could not like Henry was a lack of understanding, as the movie does a terrible job of showing the depth of their relationship before he returned home. We get a couple of flashback scenes where they hilariously try to pass off as teenagers in college, but that tells us very little. Mostly they're just about him writing the freaking letter. Like, we jump into that past scenes and he already loves her, but she's got a boyfriend, and he decides to write this letter, and that's the contents of what we end up hearing. And the contents of that letter as well, I didn't realise until I was writing the notes, but I was like, oh my god, that has to be in a Hallmark Valentine's Day card. That it's so Hallmark that you wouldn't take it seriously if you heard it. And my god, the way the women, these are words that make these ladies swoon. Woo! And yes, I said ladies because there's multiple here. You see, we have Henry's friend Zach, played by Hunter Cloudis, uses those words to woo his own potential partner. Oh, it's okay though. He justifies it by pointing out that Henry was never going to use them, and that Claire has a fella, so like, he might as well. As Henry rightfully points out, great start to the relationship there, Zach, lying already. I wonder if that'll come back to bite Zach in the butt. Of course it does. I'm not even going to play around with it and act like, oh, will it, won't it? Of course it bloody does. This is, of course, a Hallmark movie. So none of that matters because he gets the girl anyway. Because, you know, when he eventually fesses up and then says some meaningful words, she's all like, oh, how wonderful are you? As does Henry, of course. As the movie goes on, we see that Rich is a big, bad city boy who is forcing Claire to sell up and move away when she doesn't want to. So this is one of those forced issues that I've seen in these movies before. Because when Rich is first introduced, other than being a bit of a city guy, I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong with him. Alright, him and Claire have zero chemistry. But later they try and push the narrative that he just wants her to sell a house and move to the city. But here's the thing. He constantly says, and it's this way to the end of the movie, that he only wants this because he wants to start their relationship fully. And that he feels they can't do that while she's in one place and he's in another. Now, of course, the argument is, well, if he wants to start a relationship, maybe he should just move back with her. There's the strong argument, and like, okay. But they never actually have that discussion. I think that's something that the movie really lacks, is that discussion, that sensible discussion where he said, where they make that whole thing was like, she's like, why don't you come here and live with me? And he's like, oh, I can't leave the city, man. I love that place, whatever. And so on, that kind of thing. And that's when they realize, but that never comes up. It's just like, no, I want to stay here. And that's the end of it. Oh, okay. Ended up missing Rich, really. He was the best thing about the movie. And I was annoyed that they kind of turned him villainous, or as villainous as a Hallmark movie can possibly get. He's in some great scenes. One in particular I thought was really, really good and really different for a Hallmark movie. Sees him get hold of Henry's letter quite early on in the movie and confront Henry about it. I remember this scene. Out of all the things I remembered it when it came to writing the notes, this one stood out. Because I remember it being kind of slightly tense as to what was going to happen. It was different and I liked it for that. But that's about it though. The chemistry between the two leads, Henry and Claire, is alright at best. As I already said, not enough time is devoted to the backstory to make me care. And you already know they're going to end up together. Hell, the film doesn't even really try to throw it in a last minute spanner in the works either. When Henry thinks like he ain't never going to get his chance with Claire, he goes off at her and kind of refuses to sort of go to a goodbye party, drink or whatever. That's about the most they can muster, but it doesn't last long. There's no issue between them. He apologizes and she kind of like, oh, I really like him and maybe I love him and not my other guy. So it's not really there. You know what I mean by the span of the work. Someone finds out a secret the other one was keeping and they're angry about it and then they forgive him and they end up together anyway. If you're thinking it kind of sounds light on content, you'd be right. Because you can tell they didn't have much to make this into a feature-length movie. So we kind of get a couple of side stories to plump it out. Namely, Zach's search for love, which just is pointless. And even more so, a really random set of segments involving Henry's mother and an estranged friend. I still don't really know what the point of that is, that part of the story. Other than a message at the end to Henry about, you know, following his heart and all that bollocks. It just feels so jammed in. Ultimately, Letter Never Sent is a passable to sometimes decent Hallmark movie that has one or two moments that are quite good. Beyond that, you've seen it all before. And what it does show, it's not remotely interesting. You know what to do? You got any thoughts on this one? You love it? You hate it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?